I am here with Paul Robbins, Executive Vice President of Sports Performance for KINEXON. Paul, thank you for your time. For the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, your motivation, kind of where you are currently?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. And yes, my background is I've been coaching for a long time. I have my degrees are in exercise science, was my undergrad and master's, but then in 2000 or 99, 2000, I ran into Marcus Stadium, and I just started working with him, one of the original 5 guys for athletes performance, now they're known as Exos. So, and while I was there, I designed all the ESD programs, did a lot of the assessments, NFL Combine, things like that for roughly over 10 years with Mark. And then my last 2 years, though, I started working on a project with Adidas. Adidas is a major sponsor for Exos, as everybody knows. So my last 2 years, I was technically under contract for Adidas. And we started working on what many people might remember the My Coach system. The original My Coach was just an individual project, and it was for individual athletes. And so I created the first workout programs for that. And then it turned into the team system that they're creating, and I was on that project for about a year. And that would bring me to Europe quite often, and we'd be working with European soccer. And that's when they started tracking. And then My Coach team system was a GPS system. And when I got to Europe and we were talking about tracking systems over there, that's when I ran into the optical tracking systems that soccer was using. So that was probably around 2008. And so they were tracking all their players with cameras, and basically what it does is track the outline of the player, and then we can, there's a lot of tactical that's done, but what I was looking at was more the performance. My energy systems that I was creating before, now I'm going to create my energy systems based off of real game data. So that's how it started. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I realized that for me, that was the next wave for performance training and understanding performance training. So I stepped down from my position at AP, but I was still a stockholder at that time, but just continued being very close with those guys. But I started working for a company called Stats, and Stats at that time was basically just trying to get into the NBA market with their optical tracking. So it was perfect timing. I had actually gone to Europe with an NBA team, looking at what the Germans were using for soccer tracking, and so I saw there was definitely a connection there. And when Stats bought an optical system called SportView, then they started to build this, and that started around 2010. And my job, so again, there was tactical and there was data that they were selling to the media. That's what Stats does. But then that same raw XY data, I could take and develop energy systems, loads, intensity type of metrics. So that's how it started. I did that for 7 years with Stats, and then we built it up to be it was 4 teams in the NBA, and then over the 7 years we built it up. We had the entire league. The league bought into it, and the league a league-wide deal. But then of course the league puts it out to bid, and Stats lost the bid. So it was just a money type of reason that things switched. But the NBA switched optical companies. So that's when I realized at that point that I had to be independent. I had to be able to pull the XY coordinates from any system out there, because leagues are going to change. Teams are going to change systems that they use. So there's a lot of different tracking systems out there. I partnered with KINEXON 3 years ago to take the stuff that I've been doing in game data and put it in with their practice data. They got most of the NBA. 2/3 or more of the NBA is using KINEXON in practice. Then I take my game data and dump it in. So that's how I met up with KINEXON. But now we have the flexibility. We can pull in data from other sports, even if they're using different technology, because we'll take the raw XY data, but then we'll compare it to the practice data that KINEXON has. So that's how I got to where I am, because of I saw that we needed this optical to do true performance evaluations and looking at the true demands on the athletes. But then I had to be a little bit more flexible, because there's a lot of systems out there and every league uses something different. The NFL, USTA, all of them use different optical systems, but then they'll use the KINEXON practice system. So that's how I can marry the data together. So
interesting.
So that's how I got to where I am right now. And after that work, obviously in the midst of this coronavirus and the shutdown, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the next steps? How are we going to use this data, and how are we going to what's it going to look like next year for all the leagues, and how are we going to enhance this a little bit more and help the teams a little bit more with it? So it's been an interesting ride for this project. It's been about 12 years, but taken me through a lot of different products, leagues, and understanding the different advantages of every sport. And even the same sport, college to basketball, college to pros is different. So, So it's been a very interesting ride. And I'm the guy in the back. Nobody even knows I even exist. So I don't have Facebook. I don't have I don't have really any social media. With my data that I do work on, it's only back to the team. It's only back to the athletes.
And no, I mean, coming from the performance coach side, that's kind of often how we are still. So it's seems like a very ready transition for you. But one thing I found interesting, right? So you got your degrees and all that, and then you met Mark Verstegen. And so was it kind of a seamless transition from like your positions in college to performance coach at Athletes Performance, or was there some intermediate, or how did that kind of connection, I guess, spur that your further work with Athletes Performance?
Yeah, no. When I was with Mark, I was before Mark. What I was doing was just VO2 testing. I was actually I had done some high school and some college work, but then at that point I was doing just some work with 2 pro basketball teams. And I met Mark. And what happened was at that point he was looking for different type of coaching, and again my metabolic side. At first I was doing, when I came in to coach with him, it was I did everything. Like when I first started, we were doing the NFL combine. Training for the guys. So I was doing the weight training, everything. Then eventually we got big enough that I could just focus on just the ESD portion of it and the testing. But at first I was doing everything, and it was just it was a very interesting concept. People might not even know how far back it went with Mark. But when I first started working, I just came in to VO2 testing with it, and it was in what we call the old Staples Center, which was in Tempe, Arizona, right next to ASU, but it was an old Staples office supply building that was going to be torn down. So it was our temporary facility before we went into the original facility, and so that was just where never did anybody expect when we started in that building that it would ever grow to what it's doing now. It was so now. I never thought it would be this big. I mean, because there's like 5 of us when we started, and I don't know, there's like 3,000 employees now. So it's crazy.
No, that makes sense. Okay. And so obviously, right, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but with this coronavirus, the importance of using data to integrate performance and to get back on track to a level that athletes were at prior to this is going to be a very important reintegration. And so with that, what are the advantages that KINEXON offers versus other GPS or monitoring tools? I'll remit names here, just, I don't want it to be necessarily a promotional war, but overall speaking, right, what is the advantage to KINEXON over some of the other systems out there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with very simple. The NBA, there's a huge advantage. Is because I've got my game and practice data match up. So when I create a physio load and a mechanical load in the system, I know that it's going to be the same in both. I don't have to use any crazy conversions. It's not 100%, but it's as close as you're going to get. Instead of taking it just from accelerometer to an optical vector, big difference. Taking XY coordinates from an optical in an RFID system, that's much, much closer. So that's the huge advantage we have, is that I know what loads that they were doing in games, and I know what loads and intensities. I want to make sure that I say intensities as well, because intensities to me is more important than loads in some points. Mm-hmm. So I've got that truly matched up in the NBA for the game and the practice. And similar in tennis, we're doing that as well, with USTA. So we can lock in, and I know that how I'm going to design my progressions. Mm-hmm. I have game and practice data to go back and reference. Now, okay. This is so what I've been doing this coming week, I think, is our 6-week discussion. So what we've been doing, I put out to some NBA coaches 6 weeks ago. I put out an email, hey, if you guys want to get together and just have a conversation every week and just see where things go. I thought we were going to have 6-7 guys on this call. It's over 60, and they're all NBA. Wow. You got to be part of an NBA team to be on this. I invited them to this call. So we have over 60 now. Now, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, other coaches stepped in and have these PowerPoint presentations. It's been great. It's a great learning experience for all of us. But our underlying theme for this whole time is what are we doing now, and then how are we going to ramp guys up once we finally get a date and understand that when we're going to have like 25 days of a mini camp, all of that ramping up. So those are discussions that are going on constantly, and we have this weekly call that we're all talking about it. Nobody obviously has a set plan yet because we don't have a set date.
For sure.
We don't know what the schedule is going to look like, but we all know that, okay, at least we have baselines from this KINEXON data. And it's like, okay, are we going to move up 10%, 15% a week, whatever? And we're looking at loads that are going to move up, but we also have to look at the intensity, thinking about simple things like the acceleration, decelerations, the intensity of those and the number of accelerations. Most of the guys don't have a court that they're practicing on right now.
Yeah.
So they're not getting any of that change of direction. They might be weightlifting right now, but that's all they're getting. Yeah. And then another coach, good friend of mine, Bill Flynn, brought up in one of the calls. He was like, hey, what about jumps? It's like some of these guys are in apartments and stuff that they can't jump in their apartments. The ceilings are too low. It's like, so we have to look at jump loads as well. And how do we ramp all of those things up in this short period of time? So again, having baselines of that for the athletes is very helpful. Exactly how we're going to ramp it up in percentage, nobody really knows for sure. We're actually having discussions also with European soccer teams because they are starting to do some practicing already. So we're going to watch what's going on over there. But having that KINEXON baseline is huge.
Yeah. And so that was actually that's a great lead into my next question, right? Because obviously you have a great community in the NBA, and it's looking like a little bit more NFL and NCAA as well. So what is your connection with the soccer world, and why do you think that there's a disparity between those?
So we're starting to, I guess the best way to answer this is KINEXON as well, because they are a German company. They do have some German clients. Obviously, my connections with a number of EXO employees or ex-employees that are still in this in the European market. I can call them. I've had conversations with coaches in Greece, Germany, Russia, but basketball and soccer, and we just right now everybody will get on and will say, hey, we don't have an answer, but here, this is what we're thinking, this is what we're thinking. And then in the NBA, we got some guys like Dr. Daniel Medina, who works for the Wizards, but he does now on that weekly call that I was talking about with the NBA. He gets on for the first 5 minutes and he gives us an update of what he's hearing. He's from Spain, so what is he hearing from European teams? What's going on over there? So it's this whole community, like we're staying close and talking to each other as much as we can, much more than we ever have in the past, because everybody's focused on their own sport and their own league. Mm-hmm. Now the guys are like, hey, we got some time. Let's have some more conversations with other leagues and just see what they're doing. I also had a good friend of mine, Sean Haas, on this past week for in the NBA call from the NFL. He works for the Cleveland Browns now, and just to give an insight of what's going on with the NFL. So we're trying to cross the different leagues and different sports a little bit just to have some conversation. So I think everybody was too focused on their leagues before, which they needed to be, but now with this break that we're in, it's actually, because of my connections with people where I'm trying to bring in different guys all the time.
Mm. Okay. And so maybe I phrased this poorly, but I guess essentially, and you maybe answer this as well, but why do you think that KINEXON has more of a following, I guess, in the NBA than, say, like MLS or European soccer, or is that even correct?
No. So it was the low-hanging fruit for KINEXON. Number one, when I partnered with them, I already had a large number of NBA teams that I was working with, but also it was a system that was missing in any indoor sport. Okay, because obviously GPS isn't there. The GPS system is not going to work inside. So the other companies out there, the GPS companies, were selling to basketball a GPS system, but all they really used was the accelerometer. And they said, oh no, you had heart rate and accelerometer, and obviously a GPS didn't work. Well, the guys didn't wear the heart rate strap either. So really, all they're buying from these GPS companies is a very expensive accelerometer. That's basically what it was. So KINEXON with the RFID tracking, now I can get that XY coordinates and get that tracking indoors. That's why it was an easy one for them to go into the basketball, because there was a huge demand, because everybody knew that they were overpaying for GPS type of system. Okay. Because you're really using an accelerometer. Here they're going to get accelerometer as well as the tracking from the RFID. So they're getting both, which is now going to be a lot closer. Like I said before, now you're comparing the optical system to the RFID. So you've got two tracking systems that you're doing in basketball, which makes it much easier to do, opposed to the old way where you're using basically, again, GPS system which has accelerometer. Now I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at optical to accelerometer, and we would find one, maybe two metrics that we could come up with a conversion factor. Yeah. So there's a lot of gray area there. Now it was easy. So now KINEXON's done some NFL, got a couple of NFL teams now. So it's starting to do. They can do outdoors. It's a process. The NFL uses other tracking systems as well outdoors. But if you're going to go indoors and outdoors, because you have a lot of indoor training centers, then the KINEXON makes a lot of sense. So that's why, and they do a lot with handball over in Europe. They do volleyball, and then basketball was easy. Now we are starting to go outside. So it was just. Okay. It's just natural to start inside because there was it was a big need. Yeah. Now we have that. I said, now we have very good technology. Let's move it out to other outside type of sports. Obviously it can work for soccer, it can work for other ones. It's just we're just at the beginning to hit those markets.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so just kind of the natural progression, right, of where you started and where you hope to kind of, I guess, advance to and end up. So that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And so kind of moving on, right? So if this novel coronavirus was not an issue, what is an overview of how KINEXON kind of does in-season, and out-of-season monitoring and load management, and how does that kind of look with even injury prevention and kind of return to play?
Yeah, so the load management is definitely something that you want to try to look at year-round, if you can. And I'm hesitant when I'm saying this load management, because I think load management is the buzzword that everybody's talking about out there. But
most definitely,
to tell you the truth, the load is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Intensity is more important. Obviously, you have to watch the load, but let me just put it this way: if the loads on a player going into the playoffs are very high, or especially in the playoffs very high, I'm not pulling back. I need that guy. I'm going to push him. It's like, yeah, maybe you can rest guys during the season, which I'm not a huge fan of, because I think there's more to it than just that load management. I mean,
for sure,
injuries previous injuries is more of a factor than the buzzword everybody's talking about, load management. Oh, the guy sat because of load management. It's like he sat for a lot more other reasons than this load management buzzword.
Yeah.
And to me, it's intensities as well. We want to make sure that the intensity levels in practices and are going to match up to the game. So are we practicing like we play? Mm-hmm. So that's why that's the off season, that's the preseason, that's the in season. If we're training somebody, are we actually preparing them for the game and preparing them for the playoffs? Mm. So we have different metrics. We have a performance pace metric that looks at how fast the player plays. Mm-hmm. And understanding that as an intensity is like, okay, what do I need them to do with higher loads in the playoffs? The loads get higher in the playoffs. Why? Because they shorten up the bench. The starters play more. It's very clear.
Yeah.
So can I keep the intensity up? Did I prepare for them to do higher loads and higher intensity in the playoffs? So that's why load management is interesting, but it's just like years ago when everybody was talking about heart rate training. Oh yeah, heart rate zones. It's like, well, heart rate's just a guide.
Yeah.
Right? Heart rate's not the absolute. Mm-hmm. It's a number that you're looking at, but how much work are you doing? What's the wattage that you're putting out? What's the power that you're creating? Mm-hmm. Compared to the heart rate.
Yeah.
Is your heart rate responding to the power that I want?
Yeah.
So I want the power first, and then you look at the heart rate response. Same thing with here. It's like the load management. Okay, I don't understand how much load, but more important with the load, I'm going to learn how to the recovery treatments so I can return and handle those loads. So if the recovery treatments are more important, along with, all right, playing at the intensity they want. So it's a much bigger, more complex than, acute to chronic ratio of 7 to 28, and that's what I'm watching is just that load. It's like, no, that's not even, that's a very, very small part of what we do.
Okay.
It's a much bigger picture.
So essentially what you're saying is just much more multifaceted than what, say, like the sports media has kind of picked up and ran with.
Oh, yes. And let's put it this way. If anybody is just watching load management, and they probably aren't going to have a job much longer, because everybody I talk to, all the guys, the NBA guys, they understand that. They know that, hey, this is just one very small piece of the puzzle. You've got, you look at it this way, the load management, let's just say it's the NBA. Even if you talk about just like starters, so your top 6, top 7 guys, okay, right? What are they going to do? Play 30 minutes a night, and they play 3 nights a week. So, all right. So now I've got an hour and a half. And let's say they play 4 nights. Okay, I got 2 hours of data on him for the week. And then they might practice a little bit more. Let's just say I got another 4 hours of practice during the week. All right, so 6 hours out of the entire week, I got load.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that?
Yeah.
That's not load management. I got 6 hours
Yeah.
for an entire week.
Yeah.
That's, so it's a quarter of one day. So it's just like, if you're only using that little part of this to manage your athlete,
mm-hmm.
then obviously, and again, the guys that I deal with understand that that's not what happens.
Yeah.
So they are always, because you got to look at sleep, you got to look at nutrition, you got to look at their recovery treatments,
mm-hmm.
Their therapy treatments, all of these things, travel, all of these things have to be put together. So managing the 30 minutes on the court,
mm-hmm.
By sitting one night, that's so little.
Yeah.
That's the media's picking up on it, but that's not what the guys are really doing. They're managing that what happened the whole day, the whole week.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and so looking at return to play protocols, right, with KINEXON, can we use this as kind of a loose outline of what we should do with return to play, even though athletes aren't injured from this time off, this extended period off?
Yeah. So the return to play, like I mentioned before, so we're using return to play similar to what we would have done for injury. So you got two different ones. You got return to play in this situation, which is nobody really knows how to slowly ramp them up, but we're all going to figure it out as we do this and look at, how do they respond to it. We've been talking about in our calls is some type of an assessment every week. I mean, a very, very simple assessment, a movement assessment of some kind. Actually, I'm going to have an expert on force plates speak this coming Friday to my NBA guys, Matt Jordan, and he's going to talk, a little bit about, maybe you guys like force plates. Do you want to use force plates? Okay, great. Here, maybe we need certain progressions. I don't know what exactly what he's going to talk about, but understanding that, so to return to play.
Mm-hmm.
The injury-wise, again, the doctor, the therapist can come back and say, hey, his knee's ready to go.
Yeah.
Right? Well, is it ready to go for basketball? All right. So that's where our return to play is. Okay, that's where it comes back to my intensity. We have the load, how much work is being done. It's just a volume. Sure, we're going to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also going to look at the intensity. Can he explode as much what he did before? Is there a difference in the right and left?
Mm-hmm.
We have some other technology that we've been using called Plantiga that is very thin inserts in the shoe, so I need to get the asymmetry. So if I'm looking at that along with my overall load, just like, okay, am I getting that explosive power in that injured leg that I need? Is there a difference? Is the speed different? Is that performance pace I talked about earlier different? How do we slowly progress that intensity up as well? Not just the volume of work that they can do, but are they doing it at the intensity that are ready to play in a game? So we use the KINEXON to ramp us up for load and intensity. We do that all the time. That's year-round with injured players. And then we will now do a similar type of thing now overall for this return to play.
Okay. In your opinion, do you think that we're going to see a huge spike in injury just in general in sport?
Well, let's put it this way. We're setting ourselves up to do that, yes. It all depends on, there's just so many factors in that. I'm hoping the answer will be no, because we're all discussing it and we're thinking about it and we're planning on it. So I'm hoping that won't happen, but the situation definitely leads towards that happening, because I don't know how hard certain guys are working out. Again, that's talking to coaches. You got some coaches that are talking to guys that are stuck in condos, and have nothing. Then you have some guys that have a great gym in their house. You got veterans that have been around a long time and have big houses and have a gym. So it's more of how much could each athlete do? And then when I was talking to the soccer coaches early on in this, so when it first shut down, they were actually having their guys do workouts at home, but do really hard intensity workouts on Saturdays as if it was game day. All right, well, now this is going on much longer than they expected. They had to start pulling back. Then their philosophy is, it's like, okay, we don't want them, these are soccer players, we don't want those soccer players playing soccer when we first start off. We want them, their first activity is going to be something different, not soccer. Just mentally, physically, let's just do something, play tennis, do something else. And that was their first phase, or first week, basically. And then they went more towards what is the individual weakness, because they've done all the assessments of the guys. Now they're assessing when they come back, but what did they lose endurance? Did they lose explosive power? So their speeds are off. Did they lose upper body strength? Did they lose functional movements? What did they lose? And that's what they're going to focus on next. And then they'll start introducing, at that point, maybe in the third week, they'll start introducing soccer. So that was just a conversation we had. Maybe that conversation was like a month ago now. It's like time has flown so fast here. But that's how we're thinking of it, because we have to understand that there is a very high risk that guys could be setting themselves up for injury. But again, we have very smart coaches out there.
Yeah.
My job is just to help support them. And these guys are great, and that's why I love working with them. Is because we can have these conversations. We're going to, we know everybody's going to ramp up very slowly. So, and we're doing the best we can to have that situation, some kind of a plan. Let's put that. That's our goal right now. And then as long as we can get the head coaches to buy in and stay with that plan, then I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
So
going back to that kind of first phase that of the soccer teams that you were talking about, was that strictly to control intensity, the phase of a different introduction of sport?
Yeah, control the intensity as well as mentally as well. Because if they've been doing soccer or whatever, basketball and that's all they've been doing, it's like, now let's get them just moving and doing something else for a week. So it's a lot of it's mental as well. Let's just, and it could be swimming, it could be almost anything. It was just, let's not bring back soccer right off. Now again, that plan might have changed by now because of the timing, but that was our first thought. So there's been a lot of different things like that going on.
Yeah.
And again, maybe that's what, maybe in basketball right now, that might be what some teams are doing with their athletes right now. Like, okay, since we don't even have a date, let's not shoot right now. Let's again, I'll keep going back to tennis because it's maybe find something else to do, other sport, maybe the basketball players are playing soccer right now. I don't know. That's just a way to break it up until you know when it's going to start again, and then we can plan. All right, now we can start adding basketball back in. So those are part of some of the conversations that we've had.
Yeah. No, that's all interesting stuff. I really like it. Okay. And so, kind of moving toward the end here with some of this stuff, how important is it, I guess, to have some piece of technology, right? Whether it's KINEXON, whether it's Force Plate, whether it's a different, I guess, monitoring system, how important is that in this return to play? Do you think that's going to be an integral piece for teams that don't, or how do teams that don't have something like that, how are they going to manage?
Let's just put it away. In the pro sports that I'm dealing with, everybody has some type of technology, and they all know that it's extremely important because you got to monitor what's happening. Or
my apologies. So if we kind of apply this to, I guess, across the whole spectrum of teams that you work with, so including like NCAA.
Yeah. The difference with the NCAA is that hopefully, so the difference in the pro sports, let's just say baseball right now, the soccer in Europe, basketball here, hockey here, is that they're in the middle of a season and trying to ramp back up. Okay, so that's trying to understand how the ramp goes back up. The other sports, like football, everybody else, it's like, well, we're right in the middle of, like when I was talking to the NFL guys, they're actually, this is it's before OTAs. So what they're doing is like, well, we have our workouts that we're just going to send the guys. So it's not like they're going to be behind. So ramping them up, that should be, again, not knowing where the timing is, but we should be able to ramp them up normal time we get to the fall. Obviously, some of the camps they're going to be missing working with the team, but as far as the training goes, they should be able to do similar to what they should be doing this time of year anyways. It's the teams, the sports that are, and the NCAA, all of the NCAA, nobody's going to start back up. It's not like there's going to be spring sports. It's, all right, are we still really in line for our fall sports? So that's why I'm separating them right now, because anybody who's a fall sport, they're not that far behind. It's not the hands-on that they really want, but at least they can still talk to the athletes and send them workouts, and they're not in the middle. The teams or the sports that were in the middle of the season, or like baseball that was about to start their season, all right, now this is a totally different ramp-up. So that's where the technology both ways are very important, but it's just completely different, understanding that we're 3 quarters away through the season and we're taking a break and starting back up, opposed to we're just modifying our off-season for fall sports.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, Paul, I think there's a lot of good stuff to chew on here, a lot of interesting concepts to think about, right, as well as to apply. And so thank you for your time, and, looking forward to connecting again hopefully soon in the future.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and stay safe.